Hey dear, Zumzi here, and it is summer and Pride Month, so I want to wrap up the exciting stuff that I've been reading and watching lately. Some were kind of duds, and others blew me away, so cozy up, grab a boba tea or something, and let's chat. And I think I'll start with the high sodium salt content, what really disappointed me, and that is Hide by Kiersten White. I was so hyped for this book. I don't rarely ever read out of spite. I want to love what I'm reading, so I'm not wasting my time. And this book follows Mac, who's come from an abusive past. She knows how to avoid attention and keep quiet. So when she receives a mysterious offer to enter into this hide and seek competition that's across 7 days at an abandoned theme park, she's like, what the heck, I have nothing else going for me, so I'll just go and do it. However, she begins to realize that a far more sinister plot is at work, and she's going to have to work with the other contestants to try and survive. And just looking at that blurb, the story sounded fantastic. Battle Royale is one of my favorite subgenres or tropes, whatever you want to consider it, because the stakes are so high. It is a life and death situation, and I want to feel invested in the characters. I want to feel heartbreak if one of them dies. However, I did not get that from this book. I think my primary issue was with the characters. They were mostly stereotypes, so there's this bigoted old man and this Silicon Valley tech startup guy, and there's this YouTube prankster, and they are so obnoxious. And on top of that, the story does start from Mac's point of view, but then once the hide and seek game begins, it jumps between 14 different contestants mid-chapter constantly, and you're just not able to feel situated with a character and get to know them well enough. So for me, yeah, it had a lot of issues. The one cool aspect of the book that I did like was that it incorporated a certain Greek myth, but other than that, it's a better use of your time to watch Squid Games or Alice in Borderland or Hunger Games, because they do the Battle Royale genre so much better than this. Okay, next we have a book that I was a little lukewarm about, and that is Hell Followed With Us by Andrew Joseph White, and this story is about a doomsday cult who decided to release a mutating virus onto the world, and the story specifically centers around a trans boy named Benji who grew up with them. He was experimented on by them and turned into a living bioweapon. So he finally escapes, and he finds refuge with a queer group of resistance fighters, and he teams up with them to try and fight and get back at this cult. But he has to try to kind of harness and take control of his inner monster. Otherwise, he could wipe out the rest of humanity. And I do want to point out that this is a very gory YA with guts and tons of body horror, because it's inspired by Resident Evil, Evil Within, and Dead Space. So I absolutely loved the gross descriptions of the monsters. That was so up my alley. However, I feel for kind of virus stories, I do like a more scientific approach, because the virus here, the flood, wasn't explained very clearly. It's ambiguous, why some people turn into the most powerful seraphims, like Benji's turning into a seraphim, why some people are graces, and why some people are abominations, and for whatever reason, abomination is with a lowercase. I didn't know why, because grace and seraphim are both capitalized, so my brain is I want an explanation for why. Also, there is an inconsistency for why the virus affected some people really quickly and they quickly transformed. So that kind of took me out of the story because I was trying to figure it out. And also one thing that's kind of a double-edged sword about this book is that it is so fast-paced that you're never bored. However, I find that some of the relationships develop so quickly. Like, these people are strangers that Benji meets, but they all like divulge really personal information so quickly. And because this is in a post-apocalyptic setting, I would presume that people would be a little bit more cautious, especially because Benji has been indoctrinated into this cult. I just feel like he breaks away from it so quickly, and it just doesn't feel realistic in that regards to me. So yes, this book is flawed and messy. However, underneath it all, it is a story about found family, and it is a story written by a trans man that feels very personal, and it's essentially an allegory. So this is an important story to tell, and I feel like some people can really resonate with this one. Okay, next we have a dark historical sapphic romance set in colonial Singapore, and it's by Lianyu. It's called The Wicked and the Willing, and it centers around Jing Chu, whose deadbeat father passes away and leaves her with a ton of his debt, and his creditors are coming after her. So she decides to take a job as a maidservant at this mysterious Lady Verity's manor, and she like has no mirrors in her house. Her skin is always cold, and poor Jean begins to realize that her lady, her mistress, might not be human. And I do want to point out that this book might not be for everyone. It contains some very descriptive adult scenes that had me sweating. And Lady Verity, oh mama, she gives me Lady D from Resident Evil, Dommy Mommy temperamental vibes, and she's supposed to be a morally questionable character. So if you want a sapphic romance filled with messed up characters, then I think you will feel satisfied. Some of it's enjoyable, some of it's depressing. It's messed up in parts. Oh, and also I do want to point out that there is a choose your own ending, which I haven't really seen in a novel before, like maybe a choose your own adventure story that I'd read in like middle school. But this has like a choice, like you at the end get to choose between two different actions with two different consequences, and I think that's really cool, and it reminds me of video games like Until Dawn or the Telltale Walking Dead games, so that was super cool. Okay, for the last book we have a sequel, and that is For the Throne by Hannah Whitten, and I do have to admit that I went into this book with some reservations because the first book I had mixed feelings about. Like, I loved the forest and the lyrical descriptions. However, the characters Red and Amon honestly felt bland and flat to me. They still are in the sequel, but this is less of a problem. It's offset because Solmir and Neve are the focus of this one instead, and they work so much better for me because they have this chemistry and tension and bickering dynamic going on. They're kind of like reluctant allies, and I am such a sucker for that trope, and it almost reminds me of, I believe her name is Roven from In the Ravenous Dark, the relationship between her and her ghost guardian. So if you loved that book, I think you'll really dig this one too. Okay, and one last thing I do want to talk about is the concept of duality in this book and the Shadowlands. It almost reminded me of Zelda Twilight Princess. You have the sister who represents shadow, and you have the sister who represents light, and they both need each other to exist. And the Shadowlands was just a really cool place filled with awesome characters. Like, I really loved the seamstress, who is a spider lady who lives in a cottage with her three-eyed goat, And that is honestly goals for me. I loved her. Okay, last but not least, I want to talk about a standalone episode of a sci-fi anthology called Love, Death, and Robots, and it's kind of like Black Mirror, only it does animated shorts. And the story in particular that absolutely boggled my mind and blew me away was called Jibaro. And the story centers around a deaf conquistador who feels drawn to this mysterious siren-like creature, and she's infatuated with him because he's immune to her song, and she's never had that experience before. And the whole thing was really cool because it is almost without any dialogue. It is basically this contemporary emotional dance, and it's just takes you on a journey from beginning to end, and I just cannot recommend watching it enough. Alright, that's a wrap. That's all I have to talk about for now. If you've made it this far in the video, how about you leave me a sun for sunshine and summer down below in the comments. And if you've been watching or reading anything interesting or disappointing, let me know down in the comments below. As always, take care everyone, and I'll see you later. Bye!